I would tell you that like DJ Giddens is the fastball. That's the fastball. But this K-State team, as opposed to maybe last year's team, has a better mix of pitches, right? You've got Dylan Edwards, you've got Avery Johnson's legs, and you're probably in a lot of ways better in the passing game too. So you've got a full mix. You can go to other things. They did still found a way to run the ball, but the concern is like, you still have the juice on the fastball because that's probably where you're going to make most of your money throughout the year as you go through.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young and Cole Manbeck. It is our preview edition this week as we preview K-State going to Houston. Will the Wildcats be able to maintain the same energy level, taking on one of the worst teams in the Big 12 on the road? We'll break it all down here today, and as you listen, I guess depending on when, if you're driving, don't, but if not, kick back with a nice glass of Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon or 360 vodka from our good friends at Holiday Distillery. They threw a great tailgate for us last week. It was awesome to see a ton of you guys there, so thank you to everybody who stopped by. But if you were there, you got to try plenty of Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon. They also have new stuff at the fridge in Manhattan that you should go check out. So lots of great stuff happening with our friends at Holiday Distillery. Great K-State people who support us here on the pod. So appreciate all of that. Okay, we're back with the entire crew. And Cole, we have not still gotten your 3 bullet points that we were waiting on in the chat for your biggest takeaways from the Kansas game. So I figured I'd give you a chance to offer up your thoughts on the Kansas game since, I mean, listen, I know it was a struggle just to figure out how to log into YouTube. Do you really not have the YouTube app on your phone? Like, is that really a thing? We're having to talk as Vanessa. I mean, this was the same week that you said emoticons. It's
Cole is secretly a 75-year-old man. Yeah.
So I don't have the YouTube app on my phone. And I didn't realize that I couldn't do the live chat with you guys without the YouTube app. So I'm sitting there and Vanessa's driving. I was like, I can't get the comments through to the guys, Vanessa. And then I start Google searching. It says you need the YouTube app. And then I'm messaging on the Discord, and the Discord's like trying to help me. And they thought I was joking at first. And then Calm's like, oh my God, he's actually serious. He doesn't actually know. So then Vanessa just hands me her phone. Then I start chatting with you guys. But here's probably even the cherry on top for you that you didn't know. I never heard you ask for the 3 bullet points for the show because I couldn't get the show to play. It was playing, but there was no audio. And I'm sitting there just staring at you guys, and I'm like, I can't figure it out. Vanessa, why am I not getting audio? I can't hear the show. And it was because her phone was connected to the Bluetooth, to her radio, and her radio was turned all the way down. So then I couldn't get that off. And so I missed like 5 minutes of you guys talking, which is when you asked for the 3 bullet points. So I never heard that. It took me a while to figure out how to even get the show to play.
I don't know. For as much as you try, you're always sending us updates on like the views and comments on the YouTube videos, and you don't have the YouTube app on your phone. Like,
no, I just go to good old YouTube.com, hit my subscriptions, hit KCSN, K-State Athletics, check it out that way. So
do you go to a web browser on your phone to do that?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not up to speed on some stuff, I guess.
Vanessa, please.
Brody.
Yeah, Brody. Yes, Brody. Yeah, Brody's about to get to the age where I feel like he'll be able to help out. So
Brody probably will be able to help out. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, I probably wouldn't even have been able to come up with necessarily 3 bullet points. Like, anything that wasn't already obvious to you guys. I mean, Chris Tennant, game ball, what a big kick. Had him on the pod as our player guest this week with Riverbank Brewing and Wildcat NIL. Was a hell of an interview. He really opened up and talked about how he, if it wasn't for Chris Kleiman, he would have quit football, and talked about his mental struggles and the mental hurdles he overcame over the last couple of years with confidence, and really kind of vulnerable, opened himself up on the pod. So encourage everyone to go check it out and listen to it. So really happy, thrilled for Chris Tennant, who is now 19-22 on field goals over his last 17 games, hasn't missed an extra point in that time. I made sure to ask him if he's superstitious and didn't want me to mention those numbers, guys, because I get a little leery about talking with kickers and, the mental block there. So he was tremendous. I mean, great ending to the game. Loudest I've heard the crowd in the last minute or so when K-State was on defense that I've heard it in a long time. Maybe the loudest I've heard it in the Chris Kleiman era. Just barely making enough plays to win. I mean, a stat I read off to Curry, guys, on the Curry Sexton show that we did earlier this week with the film review was, and you've heard me say this after the Colorado game, K-State was 0-21 in the Chris Kleiman era when trailing with 5 minutes or left in a game coming into this season. Colorado was the first time they won a game where they trailed at any point in that last 5 minutes of a game, and they found a way to win. And then they do it again against KU, trailing with under 2 minutes left. So 2-0 in the month of October of 2024 in that situation. They were 0-21 in the previous opportunities under Chris Kleiman. And if you look at like one-score game types where K-State had a chance in a one-score game in the final 5 minutes, I think there's been like 9 or 10 opportunities coming into this season. And this is one of those few moments K-State came through. And this time it was more of a, all-encompassing thing. It was the offense at Colorado making the big drive. This time it felt more like special team steps up, defense gets a big stop. Offense did just enough to get him into long distance.
Defense made a stop at Colorado.
Yeah, they did after the offense.
That drive. It's late.
Yeah. So what did I see?
Interception. BJ Payton, by the way, is actually the clutch defensive player, if you think about it. Then
that's right. Yeah. No, big play at Tulane to seal the game with the interception. So
3-0 in one-score games this year. They were 0-4 last year.
I think I saw a stat. Well, I don't want to make it look like we're going after Will Howard here, because this isn't anything necessarily about it. I think it was Parker that shared the stat that Avery Johnson now is a starting quarterback, 3-0 in one-score games in his career, and Will was 3-7, which feels like a shot at Will. But again, like this one was more about winning the game. It was an all-around, like Chris Tennant making a hell of a kick, the defense making a big stop. The offense obviously scuffled in that fourth quarter. The one thing about the defense, guys, that was pretty amazing or remarkable is KU in the first 3 quarters averaged 7.5 yards per play, which is a really bad number by the K-State defense. And in the fourth quarter, KU had 4 drives, 0 points, obviously, 17 plays for 30 yards, 1.7 yards per play. So really stepped up in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and to kind of stress, not really slamming Will Howard for that, the 1-7 number, 0-4 last year, and I think we can all remember it wasn't just Will Howard last year. That was a collection of, miscues late that contributed to that record.
Well, you guys are missing a key component of this. The refs are in on the take this year. You got the PI situation at Tulane, you got the PI situation at Colorado. I mean, that's why things turn around in the one-score games. Clearly.
I was listening to a sports podcast last week, and I think it was like Chris Felica, the Bear, talking about Tulane. He's like, they got screwed on that awful PI call against Kansas State, or they could be 7-1. I was like, oh my God, they're still talking about that. They still don't understand football. So.
Yeah. The other thing about Kansas in the fourth quarter, I had Kansas fans pushing back when I gave Joe Kleinerman some credit for exactly what you just laid out there. And Kansas fans said, have you seen us in the fourth quarter? That's just what Kansas does.
I kind of said that all week. That I've expected them to lose in similar fashion to the way they have all year. Like some people were saying, Kansas not any good. They're 2-5. K-State will win by 2 or 3 scores. It's like, have you seen the way they lose? I mean, it'll probably be the same thing, and it was.
I mean, my dad and everybody around me kept saying, kind of joking, half joking, got them right where we want them. When K-State was trailing in the fourth quarter, and it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel good.
But I mean, to everyone's credit, it did feel like the Arizona State game, the West Virginia game, and whatever other 6.
Illinois, UNLV, yeah.
Illinois felt like Illinois and UNLV kind of felt like those 2 teams had a chance. Like Arizona State and West Virginia stunned me that they won, for sure.
Well, West Virginia especially. I mean, West Virginia, they were up by 2 scores, right, with like 5 minutes. Yeah.
In all seriousness, I mean, like that KU team, there is, we all know this, there's a decent amount of talent on that team. I mean, 6 losses by a combined 30 points.
And it's all like Layla. They should be better than they are, which, if you really think that, and I know some people are listening are probably rolling their eyes, but if you really think that, maybe they have a shot against BYU and Iowa State, because both the teams that could be K-State's friend going forward, and I know it's going off on a little bit of a tangent, are KU and Utah. They played both BYU and Iowa State.
I'm much more concerned with Iowa State than I am BYU. BYU losing, I don't feel like really helps you out all that much here. Like,
well, unless it's a 3-way tie, then
I guess 3-way tie. Otherwise,
3-way tie head-to-head doesn't come into account.
Otherwise, BYU's got to lose 3 of their last 4 to give you that breathing room.
Yeah, I mean, I just either one. Like it would take a ton of losses from both BYU and Iowa State for BYU to really matter if you're going to lose in Ames, right? I mean, really, you just got to go win in Ames.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's pretty much it. Because if you lose in Ames,
you're right. We'll put it this way: if Iowa State were to lose ahead of time, K-State would have a chance to ruin their season.
I would. The other thing with BYU too is that I think
you'd rather play them.
You'd rather have them be unbeaten in the Big 12 championship game to give yourself like more juice in the conference, more juice. I don't know. I would just
that and from a competition standpoint, and I know you're been the BYU defender, and so I understand if you disagree, but I'd much rather play BYU than Iowa State or Colorado.
Well, I would too. I would agree with that, and also I think it's just best for everybody. It would just look better if you get another 2022 TCU sort of thing and be able to beat them in the Big 12 championship game. So I'm not really, it's I guess Iowa State, but even the Iowa State thing, I've cooled on a bit. Now, would it be funny if they lost? Yes, it would be very funny if they lost. I would enjoy it, but I don't think now that they won that UCF game, had they lost to UCF, now you're talking about, okay, maybe they can stumble enough that it gives you some breathing there. The bottom line is you're going to need to win that game in Ames.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, because if you lose again, and let's say you lose to Iowa State, then Iowa State has to lose 3 of their other 4 games because they have the head-to-head on you, and you would have a second loss. And then BYU also has to lose 3 of their final 4 games. And so that's just such a long shot at this point with the schedules that those teams play, that you just got to take care of your own business. I mean, Tennant said it on the pod with me. Like, they all know, like, they can't lose a game. They lose a game, he said, they're out. So that's the mindset, and that's the mindset that players should have.
There's a part of me that just doesn't want Iowa State to have the joy of going undefeated or being 10-0, 11-0. There's some of that. And by the way, we're so far into this before we even get the storylines. Vikings were first.
That's kind of the point. That's kind of the point of the first storyline. But think about how great it would be to potentially ruin Iowa State's season in that game. Now, I went through a lot of the tiebreaker stuff, because you work your way through the tiebreakers, because I've had people asking about what if K-State, BYU, and Iowa State are all tied with 1 loss. I've also got it about Colorado, and it would go to common opponents, record against common opponents, which are only Kansas and Houston between BYU, Iowa State, K-State. So you'd assume probably that in a situation where everybody's tied, you would have beaten both of those teams. The next one is record against highest ranked common Big 12 opponent, which would be whichever one of those is higher, Kansas or Houston. So then you get to conference record of your conference schedule. And K-State's got a sizable lead there. BYU is last by like 4 or 5 games. So Iowa State in that scenario, if it's tied, like I was like, well, shit. Like there's actually there's a realistic chance of a rematch. Yeah, which that I don't really want any part of. Like having to go in there and beat them just to play them again. I
know we texted about this, and it's not exactly a rematch, but then this is thinking way down the line, and we're allowed to. The players can't, the coaches can't, but we're allowed to. If you were a 4 seed in the playoff, like a potential 5 seed right now is like Will Howard or Colin Klein.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff with the projections there, but you do have to win games. You gotta go take advantage or take control of this game at Houston. And that's going to be our top storyline, top headline of the day, brought to you by our friends at Alinco for all your home improvement needs. Make sure you hit up a local company that's been locally owned since 1986 and full of great K-Staters at Alinco, ALENCO home.com. Question is, boys, how much juice will K-State actually have for this game? Because they are a bit beat up, certainly spend a lot of emotional energy in the win over Kansas. You got a bye week on the other side, and you're playing a team that's at the bottom of the league standings or close to the bottom of the league standings, and in a dull environment, right? This is not an environment that you expect is going to bring a lot of energy out of you like it was. You think of the road games that they've played lately, Colorado, BYU. This one, I guess, will much more closely resemble Tulane, so they have experienced some of that before. But it's going to be a tough situation here to bring your full energy and focus.
It is, and maybe I'm being naive this time around. I've been guarding against that on a few different occasions this year, as many know that listen to our podcast regularly. But it just feels like since you get past Colorado on the road at night, you get past West Virginia on the road at night, you prevail against your rival, and it, for me at least, and I wonder if the coaches and players feel like this, you could almost see the finish line of what you are pretty close to achieving. And I think that can probably juice you up even more than anything. And I think it helps that Houston's won a few games the last few weeks, right? They're not the walking dead of the Big 12 that people thought they might be at the beginning of the season. They defeated TCU rather handily, to be quite honest. And then Utah has a brutal offense right now and has trouble scoring, but they still have the name recognition to where that can maybe catch your eye, and still one of the best defenses in the entire country, to know that it was at least impressive to come out on top and figure that out. So I just think Houston will have their attention more than they would in another situation. And I do think that finish line kind of being envisioned, you get the bye week the following week. I could be wrong and I could be naive, but I don't think this ends up being a lack of focus game from Kansas State.
I'd be honest. I said before the KU game, this does feel like that trap moment, because I feel like they could come out lethargic in this atmosphere. You saw the crowd shots of the Houston game against Utah last week. There was not very many people there. And look, they're a 3-5 football team right now. They're starting to believe, probably because they've won 2 of their last 3 Big 12 games, sandwiched in between, dominated by KU and Arrowhead. But yeah, there is an opportunity for K-State to have kind of this letdown spot in this situation. But to DY's point, you also have the bye week coming up right next. So, you just got to hammer home to this team, like, you can take a breath. Just get through this one. Take a breath. Then after that, the bye week falls at a great time to get some guys healthy if you can just get through this game at Houston. And keep in mind, I'm sure Chris Kleiman and the staff also reminding him, like, we watched this game, I think much of it. Iowa State was up 3-0 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter at Houston. They struggled to move the football against the Cougars to open up Big 12 play earlier this year. So they can be competitive against good teams in this league as well. Willie Fritz is a really good coach. All you have to look back to is 2022 in Manhattan with what he did at Tulane. So they're going to try to shrink the game. They're going to try to control the clock. Houston is 125th in the country in terms of seconds in between plays, at 29.3 seconds in between plays out of 134 FBS teams. So top 10 in slowest pace. They're going to try to shrink this game, control the clock, run the football. That's what they do. They don't have much of a passing game. Their offense is atrocious, to be honest. A lot of the matchups look good on paper for K-State in terms of what Houston does well versus what K-State does well, and some weaknesses K-State can exploit. So you feel good about that as long as K-State is locked in and ready to go. The betting market has us right around 12.5, 13 points right now in favor of K-State. If K-State comes ready to play, they will win this game, and they should win it by 2 scores at least. So hopefully they're locked in and ready to go, and they've got enough leadership on this team to have the mindset right and avoid any sort of trap situation.
It's brought to you by our good friends at Alinco, locally based out of KC, owned by K-Staters. They've been locally owned since 1986, when they started in an industry where most have been bought out by national companies. If you need new windows or a bathroom remodel, they've got premium window replacements, Kohler Luxstone shower systems. They can do new siding on your home, and you don't need to be in KC or Manhattan. Go to alincohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com to check out their services, including free estimates. Call Sam at 913-961-2165. That's 913-961-2165. Whether you're in Western Missouri, Northeast Kansas, the entire KC Metro, they will get you hooked up. Storyline number 2 for the week. We talked about this a bit. Cole, I'm going to go to you first on this, because this was a point of discussion in the post-game show. But can K-State get back to consistently running the ball with DJ Giddens? He had over 100 yards against Kansas, but he had over half of that on one carry. He had the 54-yarder. Outside of that, it was 17 carries for 48 yards. That's 2.8 yards per carry. And you can really argue it's been basically 9 quarters since they've been able to consistently run the ball with him. When he was gashing Colorado through 3 quarters, that kind of tailed off in the 4th. West Virginia shut it down, and then Kansas, outside of one run, did a really good job of shutting DJ Giddens down too. So where is your concern level on that right now?
Well, a little higher than it was at West Virginia when they weren't able to effectively really run the ball because Avery couldn't use his legs in that game. And I just kind of chalked it up. West Virginia, had a pretty good run defense in that moment, but was pretty surprised, candidly, that K-State struggled to run the ball so much in between the tackles against Kansas, because I think one of the misnomers probably is, like, people probably think, oh, they struggled to run it up the middle. KU must have been loading the box. They really weren't loading the box. The boxes were not that heavy. I mean, there were a lot of 5-6-man boxes against K-State where they could be manned up, and K-State was not able to get anything really going on the ground throughout that game. In fact, it felt like K-State was often in 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9 throughout. DY, you got something you weigh in there?
Yeah, well, mostly, I mean, in general, I agree. West Virginia got you because they loaded the box. KU didn't get you because they loaded the box. They won the battle in the line of scrimmage there. I think it was the worst line yardage, like yards before contact, game of the season for K-State, which means KU just won the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think that, and look, the KU defense is improved against the run, but still not to the point where they should have been handling K-State on the inside to the way that they were doing. I mean, K-State was really only finding success getting to the boundary and getting to the edge and running off tackle, and which is why I think, we listened to the show with Curry, like, we emphasized, like, Dylan Edwards probably should have been involved more in this game because he was a mismatch for that KU defense. Their linebackers aren't the fastest in the world. If you can get to the edge, you can have a lot of success against them, and unfortunately Dylan only had the 5 touches for 80 yards in the game. So I mean, I'm a little concerned, guys. I mean, a lot of it was, and look, this is a good thing in terms of explosives. They're far more explosive this year. We've talked about that, and that's a way to overcome issues in a game. They had 8 runs over 10 yards or more in this game, which is a really good number. Avery had 4 of them. And if you've got to run the ball with Avery 14 times a game, I mean, that's a lot. And the fact that Avery was able to utilize his legs so effectively, and they ran him 14 times, and the defense had to respect that, and K-State still really couldn't get the ground game going with its running backs necessarily, outside of a couple big explosives, the 54-yarder by DJ and then Dylan for 44. That's a little concerning. The offensive line has to play better. I mean, I put a lot of that on the offensive line, obviously, and the interior of that line. They got to be better than they were against KU, and they're going to be going up against a Houston defense that is better than what KU is, especially against the run. So that's the strength of this Willie Fritz coach team, is kind of their defense overall. They're 40th in the country in points per drive allowed. It's the 3rd best of any team in the Big 12, I believe.
Well, Cole, to your point about, hey, they still rushed for 200 plus yards, right? They still found a way. They got explosives. They have more than just, I would tell you that, like, DJ Giddens is the fastball. That's the fastball. But this K-State team, as opposed to maybe last year's team, has a better mix of pitches, right? You've got Dylan Edwards, you've got Avery Johnson's legs, and you're probably in a lot of ways better in the passing game too. So you've got a full mix. You can go to other things. They did still found a way to run the ball. But the concern is, like, you still have the juice on the fastball, because that's probably where you're going to make most of your money throughout the year as you go through. So, all right, well, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell that I've got some new home field apparel today. It's not really like new, but it's new for me. I've got the old Big A Champs shirt on today, so thank you to our friends at Home Field Apparel for the hookup on that. DY is wearing Baylor, the hottest team in the Big 12, the Baylor Bears. DY representing for Baylor. Maybe that's foreshadowing to later on. We'll see. Cole, any home field apparel today?
I'm sorry, guys. I'm rocking all NIL. This is an NIL shirt. I've got a Wildcat NIL hat on. I do have a home field hat right here that DY is wearing.
There we go.
Sitting right by me. So I've got 4 different home field hats sitting in my office here, but 3 of them are out of reach. So I got plenty of home field gear, and I'm gonna get John. I think I'm going to buy that campus pullover jacket that Coach Tang was rocking on Saturday at the KU football game. That thing looks sleek. So go check it out at homefieldapparel.com. New campus pullovers. That looked awesome.
Okay, so Cole, I have to call this out. I was thinking about doing it, and then you doubled down. There was somebody who came by at the Fremont tailgate and said, yeah, man, you guys are sure rocking all that stuff, huh? You're really rocking all that home field apparel. We go to it a lot. We say it a lot. It's I got the impression that it was also raising the age of the show. I got the impression that was also aging the show, that we continue to say rockin' over and over.
Oh, so we're not supposed to say rockin'. Okay. What's another word? Let me go to my thesaurus and see what I should look up to describe how, what's a new hip word?
I think we could probably, in the same vein, say that these home field shirts are the bee's knees.
Damn, I'm taking
He was
note.
doubling the age and was already high.
I'm taking note because I want to make sure that I have, Riz, as the kids like to say. DY, did you love it when I slipped Riz into the conversation with Jace Brown a couple weeks ago on the pod? And how?
Well, I mean, we're an old podcast, but we sound older when we try to be something we aren't. So let's not do that.
You don't think
I love Nick responds, that's much worse. Yeah, that was the point. It's a joke. It's a joke, all right? I'm making fun of us, We're going to start saying the bee's knees. Here's the problem. I was trying to think of like other terms from the 50s or something, but
now I understand why I realized what some of our audience was last night when I was complimented at our podcast.
Bee's knees. So that's not okay. Let me scratch that. I actually took note that bee's knees was going to be what we say, that I'm bee's kneesing my home field gear.
I actually like that. If you want to say that, I would be okay with that. I'm sure Home Field Apparel loves this read that they're getting out of us. Go to homefieldapparel.com. I'm telling you, that will make you cooler. Okay, so everything that just happened before this, don't do any of that. Don't repeat any of that. But go to the internet, go to homefieldapparel.com, or I'm sure they have an app. Use the app. Don't be like Cole and YouTube. And then use promo code 3MON24 and get 15% off your first order. That's promo code 3MON24 for 15% off your first order. 100 plus K-State designs, 50 plus K-State designs, 100 plus other teams that are out there. If you want to be like DY and branch out, Nick, our producer, was just telling us about all the different schools that he got, Western Kentucky, Ball State. So no matter which school you want to rock, you can do it at homefieldapparel.com. And we're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com. Whenever I discover something new, like a TV show or a book or a movie, the first thing I want to do is share it with my friends. And that's exactly what it felt like when I discovered that with Mint Mobile, you can get premium wireless service for just $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. It was such a good deal, there was no way I could just keep it to myself. So friends don't let friends overpay for wireless. You can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan and switch to Mint Mobile for just $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And if you're worried about bringing your own phone and your contacts, you can do all of that when you switch to Mint Mobile. So ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/3maw. That's mintmobile.com/3maw. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/3maw. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right, final top storyline of the week. How much concern should we have about linebacker depth at this point? Because we now know that, unfortunately, on literally the first play of the game, the kickoff, the opening kickoff against Kansas, Asa Newsome gets hurt. Chris Kleiman said at the press conference this week he is out for the year. Bo Palmer also out for the year. A couple of depth pieces at linebacker there. So it has not been the frontline linebackers that are going down, but man, I mean, it feels like for a second straight year, this has turned into a position where depth is wearing thin. You lost Jake Clifton to a mission at the beginning of the year. Alec Marinko came in as a transfer, and it just has not worked out. We haven't seen him really on the field. So you're pretty thin all of a sudden. Where's the concern level, DY?
High, but if nothing else happens, probably survivable. But your margin for error is basically at zero at this point, right? Even against KU, the answer behind Austin Romaine at middle linebacker when he needed a rest was Austin Moore. So they don't have another middle linebacker that they feel comfortable playing at this point. Behind Austin Moore at the weak side linebacker is Rex Van Wy, who might have a good future at some point, but he's going through his own struggles. We talked about a lot of the tackling problems the last couple of games. He's been a pretty significant part of that as well. Desmond Purnell's already playing a bunch of snaps because Asa Newsom was probably only given 10 to 12 a game anyway. So now you're asking him probably to shoulder just a larger load. So I think these guys are probably just going to be asked to play 85, 90% of snaps the rest of the way and hope that they can hold out.
Yeah. And Desmond Purnell's been struggling a little bit. A lot of missed tackles the last couple of weeks as well. And, I guess the good news is, guys, you get through this game, you've got the bye week. I don't know. Maybe you can.
I would say Purnell's struggles are at least fixable. I mean, that dude gets to where he needs to be almost all of the time. It's just like, get there a little bit more under control and just make that tackle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is probably a long shot, but you got a bye week. Can you get a younger player, in that bye week to get acclimated? Probably not. I mean, that's probably who they've got at this point that they're playing.
And a younger player, middle linebacker, is a true freshman, and Boobin Hart. A younger player.
I know Romaine's been kind of spent, but they've done Clifton and Romaine both played very young, right? Weren't they both playing as true freshmen?
Yeah.
So they've done it before.
I don't know if Clifton did, but Romaine definitely did. But they didn't want to; they just had to.
It's disappointing though, guys. We heard a lot of, not a lot, but we heard some buzz on Terry Kirksey this offseason, heading into the season, and now they're not comfortable putting him on the field again. They don't feel good about it, and we're 9 weeks into the season. Look, this boils down to a couple of things that really shouldn't. It feels a lot like last year, with all the injuries that are piling up and not having the depth that they probably need. And it boils down to a couple things. Jake Clifton, surprised them when, he flipped on the decision. He decided to leave, go on this missionary trip.
The only thing I would work against you on that is I think this would be a sign that they have depth, but now that they've had to use it all.
Well, their depth was a guy coming off a torn ACL.
That was a 4-star recruit that they wanted.
I love Asa Newsom, but they knew Asa would be slow to recover at this point coming into the season.
Right. I guess here's my thought process. My only thing is, you ask any team that if they lose their two of their back of three middle linebackers, their depth is going to be depleted.
Look, this is the problem that I have is Alec Marinko was a misevaluation, and that's. We talked about Alec Marinko. He was hurt his entire New Mexico career. And that was the guy they chose over Elijah Herring, the Tennessee transfer linebacker, who now has 35 tackles and 3.5 sacks for Memphis. Why? That is an error by the coaching staff and what they did there. Don't you agree? That Alec Marinko can't get on the field.
I guess we don't know. I don't if there's stuff going on behind the scenes that was a reason that they didn't necessarily want him here, and maybe that would have been a problem, just in fairness to the coaching staff. But in terms of a pure production thing, and he was also hurt a little bit at the beginning of the year, which was a concern with him. He was coming off of an injury. But clearly, based on production, yes, that's a major swing and a miss to have taken Marinko over Herring. So yes, I'm definitely frustrated with that. If we want a little optimism here, I would just say Jay Clifton played 20 plus snaps in the final 7 games of his true freshman season in 2022. So they won a Big 12 championship doing that. They also, you're talking about switching positions. Remember they won a Big 12 championship while playing Keenan Garber, who played 75% of the year at receiver, in the Big 12 championship game at defensive back. So, they've been able to get creative.
I think switching position from 1 to linebacker without really knowing what you're doing is probably a little bit more complicated. Here's something I'll throw out.
Well, just the point, DY, is they found creative solutions. Like this coaching staff has found creative solutions before.
Maybe they can find 5 to 10 snaps from a Terry Kirksey, from a Boone Morris, whoever it may be, right? Maybe. And then you kind of scheme around that in those snaps. That's not lost on me that it's a possibility. Something that somewhat jarred my memory on, and I've been thinking about. I don't love the idea because I think you're taking them away from a spot where he's starting to turn it on. But Tobi Osunsami has played linebacker in this scheme.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, the other thing that you could do is you could play a little bit more 4 down front and 2 linebackers, right? At different times if you feel like you need to give a guy a break. I mean, they feel like they got pretty good depth on the D line, right? You could put Cheedy at one of the D tackles in pass rush situations. You could have Siomalo on there. I mean, you could play.
I would say you're just not going to be able to do that against Cincinnati and Iowa State with the way that they play. But
yeah, Cam Salas was a guy, admittedly, that came to my mind as somebody that I would love for the light bulb to come on, that changed positions this offseason and slid down from safety to linebacker. It'd be great if, he could have the light bulb come on.
Well, probably, I mean, in addition to probably still figuring it out, because you mentioned the position change, he's still probably a little lenient too.
Yeah, he does look a little bit slim. Look, I don't want to go remiss here without saying that just gutted for Asen Newsome. I mean, one of my favorite recruits, and the K-State's landed in quite some time, and he had such a tremendous bright future. And I mean, he still could. I mean, we don't know the nature of the injury other than it's season ending, but it didn't look good. And it just sucks that a guy like that has to endure this back-to-back years to start his college football career. It's just terrible luck.
Yeah. You wonder about long-term effects from that. But yeah, I mean, look, thinking of the dude, for sure, I echo those thoughts.
Maybe it was Bill Palmer's second season-ending knee injury as well.
That's true, yeah. Got it for both of them. Yeah, that sucks for both those guys.
I mean, Taylor Potier had the same thing happen, and he's come back and been able to be a regular and play. So, it's not like that path is totally shut down at all. But anyway, yeah, best wishes to all of them, and I will, for now, put some faith in the coaching staff to figure it out. Okay, well, this is how much I respect Houston. I'm going down my outline. I didn't even switch out Kansas preview for Houston preview, so sorry, Willie Fritz and company, but here's the Houston preview from Cole. We've already got a bit of a taste of it. Not a very good offense. They've been rotating quarterbacks. Donovan Smith was legitimately, I saw him mocked into the first round by a couple of people, and he can't even stay the quarterback at Houston because they've been playing Zion Chris. They've had, they've been shut out twice in Big 12 games. They've been kind of a mess offensively, but they do have a pretty good defense.
Well, it's interesting, John, because when they've started Zion Chris over the last 3 weeks, they're 2-0. That's the 2 Big 12 games they won were with Chris as the starting quarterback when they beat TCU 30-19. Chris went 15 of 18 passing for 141 yards, ran for 97 yards on 11 carries, and then they started him against Utah, and they won that game 17-14. Not that the offense was a juggernaut in that game, but found a way to win. And then sandwiched in between that, they went to Arrowhead and played KU. Nick tells me that Chris actually started technically against KU, but got dinged up. Donovan Smith had to play the majority of that game because when I was watching the second through fourth quarters, Smith was busy throwing the ball to Kansas defenders the entirety of the time, and KU they got dominated and lost 42-14 in that game when Donovan Smith is the quarterback against the Jayhawks. John, you mentioned it. This is the Houston offense. It's arguably the worst in the Big 12 in all likelihood. Kelly Ford ranks the offense 111th nationally. The FEI of Brian Formeau ranks him 100th nationally and 15th in the Big 12. Points per drive, 1.13. That is 132nd in the country out of 134 FBS teams. To put that in perspective, guys, I pulled K-State's opponents' points per drive on offense that they played so far this year, FBS opponents specifically. Tulane is 2.93. Keep in mind, Houston 1.13. Tulane's at 2.93, which is 19th in the country. BYU's at 2.9. Colorado 2.62. West Virginia 2.58. Arizona 2.17. Oklahoma State 2.12. And KU 2.51 points per drive. The next closest offense in points per drive that K-State has played is Oklahoma State at 2.12. Houston is a full point below that. And we know how much Oklahoma State's offense is struggling right now. Yards per play, 4.8 for the Cougars. That's 112th nationally. That's last in the Big 12. Offensive success rate, 120th in the country. That's last in the Big 12. K-State's defense, 21st nationally in success rate against opponents, and number 2 in the Big 12. Offensive explosiveness, 15th in the Big 12 and 104th in the country. This is good news. Houston is not an explosive team offensively because K-State's defense is 126th in the country still in explosive plays allowed and 14th in the Big 12. I could go down the line, like line yards, 2.62. That's 124th in the country. That's last in the Big 12. That's lines attributed on rushing, yards attributed on rushing attempts to the offensive line. Points per opportunity, dead last in the country. Havoc rate allowed, 130th in the nation, last in the Big 12. John, you mentioned they were shut out back-to-back games to begin Big 12 play at Cincinnati and home versus Iowa State. They've scored 14 points or less in 5 of their 8 games this season, 17 or less in 6 of 8. We talked about Zion Chris. He went 6 of 13 passing for 61 yards against Utah on Saturday, 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. He's a 6'3", 210-pound third-year player who transferred this offseason from Louisiana, threw for 1,200-plus yards and minimal action, not minimal, but split action at Louisiana last year, completed 67% of his passes with the Ragin' Cajuns, 11 TDs, 5 interceptions. He ran for 492 and 73 carries, 6.7 yards per rush last year. He's got 744 yards on the ground in his career and 5.8 yards per rush. Look, Willie Fritz is going to try to run the football. In their wins, they've been effective running the ball. You look at what they did against Utah. They had 49 carries for 219 yards. They did not drop back and throw it much, only threw it 13 times. Against TCU this year, they went for over 200 yards on the ground as well and averaged 4.7 yards per carry. So they're going to line up. Zion Chris is going to try to run the football at quarterback. They're going to use their running backs. They've got about 3 of them that they like to attack you with. Nobody over 300 yards on this season on the ground. But over their last 6 games, I mean, their first 2 games, they had 1.5 yards per rush and 1.7 yards per carry against UNLV and Oklahoma to start the season. Since then, they've ran the ball 232 times for 1,087 yards, which is an average of 4.7 yards per rush. And that's including sacks, which is an important call-out, guys, that I'll say last here, is that Houston is allowing a 10.4% sack rate, which ranks 124th nationally out of 134 FBS teams. It's the highest sack percentage of any team K-State has played. You'll recall K-State got Shedeur Sanders on the ground, 7 times against Colorado? Well, Colorado's 109th nationally in sack percentage allowed at 8.5. Houston's another 2% higher. Now, Donovan Smith is more notorious for taking sacks. He had 17 sacks taken this year. Zion Chris, though, sacked 6 times with 44 passing attempts.
What I will say is, too, that probably hasn't been mentioned yet. I don't know when we want to get into it, but the weather forecast for this game actually gets worse the closer we get.
Yeah, well, we've got the weather forecast just like we do for Tulane.
I mean, does it get worse? Someone on the Discord said it was getting better, so...
I listened to a actual local, because you can look at the app, and I look at my weather app for Manhattan sometimes, and it's completely wrong. So I actually went and listened to a local forecast this morning before we got on, and they the entire weekend is just going to be rainy, windy, and a complete mess.
This was actually from one of our local Houstonians, DY, that gave the record weather report. But it was I think 36 hours ago that came through, and things appear to have changed. Look, we're looking at 81 degrees with a low of 74, 61% chance of rain on Saturday. Cloudy with occasional rain is how it's described. So that is a good thing. Occasional rain showers. However, to DY's point, we're looking at 15 to 25 mile per hour winds out of the southeast, which is going to impact throwing. You would have to think that actually...
Gust stronger than that.
Yeah, you'd have to think that probably plays to Houston's strengths a little bit because they cannot throw the ball. Houston is 122nd in passing explosiveness. That's last in the Big 12. K-State's defense, 120th in passing explosiveness allowed, 14th in the Big 12. So that's a good thing, too. They aren't necessarily going to exploit that. But humidity of 80%, that's very high. Similar to Tulane, it's going to feel like 85 degrees during the game. So, yeah, you got some rain showers. You're going to have a lethargic atmosphere. You're going to have a lot of wind. It's going to be hard to throw the ball. Now, look, K-State is one of the best rushing teams in the country. Can they get it going? I mean, against a Houston defense, we can talk about that Houston defense in just a minute, but weather will certainly play a part.
Well, tell me about the Houston defense then. K-State going to be able to throw it against the...
Very irritated that we were about to talk about the Houston defense.
Look,
yeah, you're like, let's talk about the Houston defense.
No. I respect the Houston defense.
Any Willie Fritz team will have a good defense.
Yeah, I mean, any K-State fan should respect the Willie Fritz defense after what Tulane did to K-State a couple of years ago. I know that was still with the Adrian Martinez offense struggling, but...
And they could do that again.
Yeah, I mean, they're good enough to lock you down if you're not focused. And like we talked about, if K-State still struggles to utilize the fastball and run with DJ.
Yeah, third best defense this season that K-State will probably have played behind Colorado and BYU and Colorado. Points per drive allowed by Houston.
All the crap you gave Colorado, did I just hear that right? That Colorado was one of the two best defenses that K-State has played this year?
That would be correct. Who won the K-State Colorado game?
Well, K-State won by the skin of their damn teeth, man. That was a pretty close one, if you recall.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado has clearly gotten significantly better on defense. I mean, I'm not going to try to dodge that or duck it at this point. I mean, they've made dramatic improvements, and have to give a lot of credit to the defensive coordinator they hired. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he came from Cincinnati Bengals.
Livingston. Robert Livingston, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, that win continues to look more and more impressive as the season goes on, and maybe one of the best wins in the Big 12. I don't know if anyone else is going to go into Boulder at this point and win a game. Points per drive allowed by Houston, 1.88. That's 40th in the country. Again, I mentioned it. Colorado at 1.86 was number 39 in the country, and then BYU's at 1.75. That's number 30. Outside of that, K-State's opposing defenses have been pretty porous outside of Tulane that they went up against, which is at 1.99 points per drive, 51st in the country. West Virginia, KU, Oklahoma State, all at 85 or worse, and Arizona 101st in points per drive allowed. Houston defense, yards per play allowed, 5.2. That's 53rd nationally. Kelly Ford ranks their defense 52nd in the country. Success rate overall defensively, 33rd nationally, number 4 in the Big 12. Explosiveness allowed. This is an area that K-State could potentially exploit. They're 115th nationally in explosiveness. K-State offensively is 27th in the country now in explosives. Rushing success rate allowed, 36 nationally. Yards per rush allowed, 4.3 yards per carry. That's number 77 in the country, though they held TCU to 66 yards rushing on 22 carries and Utah to 90 yards on 26 carries. Held Oklahoma to 75 yards on 29 rushing attempts. So held 5 opponents to 3.9 yards per carry or less. However, KU and Iowa State both rushed for well over 200 yards against them and more than 6 yards per carry. Rushing explosiveness allowed, 125th in the country, 15th in the Big 12. K-State's offense is 14th in the country in explosiveness on the ground and number 2 in the Big 12. So an opportunity to get some big plays on the ground game. Yards per pass allowed, 6.7. That's number 40 in the country. Sack percentage for that Houston defense, 5.7%. That's 70th nationally. And passing explosiveness allowed, 85th in the country. So K-State could potentially get a home run play too, but the wind will certainly impact the ability to throw the football in this one. This one might be one of those heavy ground attacks where we see K-State go well over 200 yards in the game. They're going to probably have to with what the weather looks like. So
I was just going to say, this is one of the, like, if I could take a look at the box score after the game, and if I saw K-State north of 200 yards rushing, I would feel pretty good. If I saw that south of 200 yards rushing, I would be a bit concerned.
Well, the other thing I would say, Houston also is 104th nationally with a -5 turnover margin, and they have 15 turnovers on the season. 1.9 turnovers per game ranks 117th in the country. So they make some mistakes, and K-State's 40th in the country in turnover margin at +3, but they're +5 just since the BYU game. Turnovers have been a big part of the turnaround for K-State and forcing teams into making mistakes. So, you know, maybe with the wind and forecast, they get a couple hiccups from that Houston offense, a couple giveaways there. One other thing I forgot to mention, guys, Brian Formeau projects K-State with an 87% win probability, 33-17 margin score projected. Bill Connolly's SP Plus has an 89% likelihood to win with a projected margin of 19.4 points and a score of 35-16. Kelly Ford, pretty close to similar to that 87% win probability.
What I would say is, unlike, trying to think, K-State just played KU, yeah. Unlike the last few teams that Kansas State has played, this is an opponent that you can kind of game script out. Like, they don't want to get it. Houston, doesn't want to get into a ball game where they are forced to throw a lot or they are forced to throw in obvious passing downs in situations. So we say this sometimes like, oh, a good start would sound good here, a good start would sound good there. It would here. If you get Houston really behind the 8-ball, especially in what we believe to be undesirable weather conditions, forcing them to throw in obvious passing downs is probably a kill shot for this team the way that they are constructed.
Well, not only an early start in the game, but early better starts on first and second down, something they struggled against KU, right? It felt like KU.
Yeah, in general. I'm talking more Houston here, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it felt like KU was always in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, right? If you can get Houston in a 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Kansas still is converting to 3rd and longs, just like every other team has on K-State.
Yeah, well, they obviously have far more talent at wide receiver. I mean, Houston's leading receivers at 223 yards on the year. Like they don't strike a lot of fear into you with the passing game, especially in this weather. So to your point, like get up, make them drop back and throw the football. K-State obviously terrific against the run.
And if you get into a game that they want to be in, where it's a box game, or it's like run game first, run game, you're not going to have enough possessions to really pull away. The weather, you start to make Houston believe like this probably goes one of two ways.
And I will say, like you got a couple of nice tests to gear up for this one with KU and West Virginia, and their rushing attacks. They're better than what Houston is. Both of those teams, and they both had dual threat quarterbacks in Daniels and Green. Now Green had some success on the ground. That's about all West Virginia did well against K-State. But you've been able to kind of gear up for these dual threat quarterbacks that you're now going to face with Zion Chris, who's not as they're just not as explosive or as scary when it comes to the run game as the other two teams you faced prior 2 weeks.
Their offensive line's not as good. Yeah.
Cole, that wide receiver stat that you threw out there, that's very Snyder 2.0-esque. I mean, that feels like a 2016, like a 2015 through 2018 K-State number there. That you'd have your leading receiver in November with 200 yards.
Yeah, they have 3 guys with just over 200 yards at receiver, but nobody over 223. And that's Stephon Johnson that leads them. He's an Oklahoma State transfer.
Quick hitters, which did you have more confidence in? Chris Tennant hitting a 51-yard field goal or the defense getting a stop after said 51-yard field goal when Kansas had 2 timeouts and a minute 42 left? Which were you more confident in?
Probably it's not rooted in any kind of base of fact or stats because it's probably the opposite of that, but it's probably the defense just because I knew when they came back out there, the crowd was going to make it really difficult on KU. Jalen Daniels and that KU offense has struggled in that moment the entire season. I don't think they have scored a point yet in the last 2 minutes of any half of football this year. And then KU's, you'd say what you want about the K-State defense. It had played good in that fourth quarter up to that point, and they still got stops at Tulane and at Colorado would have mattered in similar situations. So nothing against Chris Tennant. Probably should have had more confidence in him than I did, but I was more confident in the defense.
Look, I mean, this isn't a knock on Chris Tennant. I mean, I don't trust any college kicker from 50 yards beyond. I mean, I get nervous with any kicker from 30, 40 yards. I mean, college kickers, it can be a roller coaster, kickers in general. And so it's not a knock on Chris Tennant, who's done a hell of a job for this K-State team the last couple of years, honestly. But I had more faith in the defense getting a stop once you got ahead because the DY outlined everything. I mean, the crowd was going to be significantly louder. I mean, it was going to be a tough situation. KU's been in that situation all season, and, you know, that what's their mindset? Here we go again. What's happened before this season when they're down with a couple minutes left in that opportunity, in that moment, they've struggled. And then also I kept thinking to myself, well, even if KU gets into field goal range, they've only attempted 7 field goals all season, and the kid already missed an extra point. So, like, if we're talking like a 45-yarder in that moment, what's their kicker going to do if they even get into field goal range? So I'd give a lean toward the defense after, it's easy for me to say now that I had more faith in them. But my reaction immediately after Tennant made the field goal, guys, was like, too much time. KU's going to score.
So, well, you guys all make really compelling points, and even in the moment, I said I only had like a 3 of 10 confidence with Tennant hitting the field goal, but I still feel like it was maybe like 2.5 with the defense after that.
We were in the press box, so you have a tabletop in front of you, and like probably 5 feet behind us is a wall, And right before that kick, Kurtz backed his chair up all the way to the wall. I don't think he wanted to watch the kick.
I really didn't, but at the same time, I was not thinking as logically, and you're just more wrapped up in the emotion of it. And the emotion was, all right, I celebrated for a half second in my mind about the field goal being made, and then I was like, oh my God, like this defense today, the way this has gone, like they're going to march right into field goal territory. I actually felt like I had less confidence in the defense. It was not really rational, but that was where I was.
My mind is kind of blown just hearing Chris Tennant talk about the moment and his mindset. And, I know he said a lot of this in the post game, but on the 3-mile show that we did yesterday, he also said that right before the snap, he even reminded McClanahan, the placeholder, to throw the ball up so he could hit the home run on the celebration, literally like seconds before the ball was snapped. I mean, that just blows my mind that you could, like I would shank McClanahan, I'm sorry. I would shank that kick. Even if I was a good kicker, I'd kick that ball 80 yards to the left into the seats, probably into the west side or east side of the stadium, because in that moment I would choke so bad. I mean, just blown away by how calm he was to make that kick.
Well, also, like, I don't know, I've seen Tennant, he's been better from distance. Like, I was looking back here, it was a 45-yarder that he hit at Texas to tie the game and send it to overtime last year. Like, he's been good with clutch kicks that are from distance. So some of his issues throughout his career have come on shorter kicks. But anyway,
we talk about that. We talk about that on the show, and shorter kicks being more of a hurdle to get over mentally because everyone expects you to make them.
So I wondered about this. Willie Fritz is obviously now one of the head coaches at one of the 4 Texas schools that we have remaining in the Big 12. Trying to think, I was like, okay, I could ask like where does he rank, but let me ask it like this. If Chris Kleiman retired tomorrow and you had to take one of the Big 12 Texas schools coaches, would you take Willie Fritz, Dave Aranda, Joey McGuire, or Sonny Dykes? I love your facial expressions on this, man. I love your facial expressions on this.
I mean, the best coach by far is Willie Fritz. My only trepidation on hiring him at this point is like, how far into his career is he already? I mean, he's in his 60s. Like, how much longer is he going to coach? Are you hiring someone at that point? Given the other options, I probably still hire Willie Fritz. But if I wasn't going to, boy, I don't know. I know I'm not going to hire Sonny Dykes. That's probably the first one I'm out on.
He's 64, by the way.
Yeah, I'd hire Willie Fritz. The second guy, I'd probably just take a shot at Dave Aranda.
I think you take a shot at McGuire for recruiting, or Aranda because he's going. The only one I'd be torn between Joey McGuire and Dave Aranda. I'd probably still do Joey McGuire, but it would depend on who McGuire's bringing with him because he's never figured out the quarterback position, which is pretty important in the game of football.
Well, I mean, Willie Fritz, I do think, like, in terms of being a ball coach, like, Willie Fritz is the best. He's proven that time and again. But yes, he is reaching that stage where you're like, all right, man, like mid-60s, I don't know. To me, Joey McGuire is a pretty obvious second just because he's energetic and a dynamic recruiter. He's recruited at Texas Tech at a much higher clip than his previous couple of predecessors have, and maybe even Mike Leach. I don't know. I'm not familiar with what the recruiting rankings would have said about how Leach was recruiting there, but clearly, I mean, he leaves a lot to be desired in terms of what the results have actually been.
At the end of the day, I'm going to hire Willie Fritz. I think I might go Dave Aranda over Joey McGuire now that I think about it, because I don't trust Joey McGuire to get his coordinator hires right. I don't trust him to get the quarterback position right. Dave Aranda's had a lot of quarterback problems too, but geez, he did he win a Big 12? Did he beat Oklahoma State? I don't know.
Yeah, Dave Aranda's.
Nick makes a good point here. Joey McGuire's quarterbacks have been hurt like every year. This year, Barron Morton statistically is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. He has not been the problem.
Yeah, their defense is now the problem. But anyway, I would go Aranda. I think he's been to the Big 12 championship, and heck, I think they're going to go 7-5 or 8-4 this year if you look at their schedule.
Barron Morton's hurt again. He's questionable for Iowa State.
I think he's going to play this week. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to play. I think Thamo reported that yesterday.
I'd probably go to Randa. We could debate this more if we want, but it's probably not worth it. But I would probably go Randa. He's had a great year. This year probably going to end up a solid year and too bad.
Yeah, I mean, he won a Big 12 title, and he just went to Lubbock and hung 59 on Joey McGuire. And Joey McGuire gave up 51 to Abilene Christian, and I cannot get on board with Joey McGuire at all. He can recruit, but I don't think he can coach a league.
And he just lost a 17-point lead to TCU, who's not any good. I mean, Texas Tech, they had no business winning less than 9 games with their schedule this year.
I mean, that is fair. They kind of got the West Virginia sort of treatment. It's the point of the question is, there's not a lot of great options there.
Willie Fritz, you have to, even with his age, because he's that much better than the other 3.
Well, the state of Texas has a lot of shitty football coaches in this league.
Well,
Sark.
Not Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz is a good football coach.
Sark and Elko, though.
Yeah, boy, Elko, man. Elko is trending up, but of course it's all his offensive coordinator that's making that happen.
Yeah.
Who loses more regular season games the rest of the way, Colorado or BYU?
Some of it's largely going to be dependent on the schedule.
I'm glad you asked, DY.
Colorado's got a tougher schedule probably coming up. I mean, you still got to go to Lubbock. They got to go to KU, although Oklahoma State and Utah at home look more doable than before.
BYU, let me lay out the schedules for everybody. BYU is at Utah. They have Kansas at home. They are at Arizona State. And they have Houston at home. Colorado is at Texas Tech. They get Utah at home. They are at Kansas. They get Oklahoma State at home.
I'll say BYU loses 2, Colorado loses 1.
Wow, you think they're losing 3 combined, huh?
I don't see BYU winning a game. So 0-4. No, just kidding. John likes to...
I just think there'll be more carnage in this last month than people are expecting just because there hasn't been as much in the first few.
I think BYU could lose at Arizona State. Look, KU could give them a run if they come in and play like they did in Manhattan. At Utah, you never know about a rivalry game. The betting spread is 4.5 for that.
I'm talking to BYU people even the other day about that game, and they all just chalked that up as a loss already because they never win at Rice Eccles.
Yeah, and both teams are on a bye, so Whittingham, they're going to try to circle the wagons. Maybe Utah will give it one last run there going into that game. Will actually be one they care about at this point while their season's been washed away with all their other aspirations. So I would say BYU will lose more, but I've been wrong on BYU all year. And Colorado, maybe they lose one more game. I don't know. I mean,
Colorado can lose to both Tech and KU.
Those are the two that I don't think they're going to lose at home to Utah or to Oklahoma State. So, yeah, it would be at Tech or at KU.
I think they both lose 1. I would take them both to lose 1. Finally, who makes the playoff this year? Will Howard, Colin Klein, both, or neither?
Boy, yeah, that's a good one. Texas A&M's kind of got a pretty nice path up until Texas.
They're in a great spot, man.
Yeah.
They're in a great spot.
And just getting to the SEC championship probably locks them into the playoff because they're not going to be penalized for losing that game. I think A&M makes it. People are going to be like, what? But I don't think it's a lock that Ohio State makes it. Like, they have.
Of course not. I mean, I think they may lose this. And I think they may lose this week.
They have to go to probably the best atmosphere in all of the Big Ten, which is Happy Valley when they are juiced up. And they're going to basically do it with an offensive line that could start at Purdue.
Yeah.
An offensive line that resembles that of Purdue. I don't know if people understand how bad the Ohio State offensive line is. Their backup left tackle got his ass beat over and over again last week, and then he got hurt. So they're going to be starting someone worse than him.
Boy, they're just making Will Howard be the hero, huh?
I mean, who's Ohio State got after Penn State? They play Michigan, who sucks. Okay, that they'll win against Indiana. It's a fraud. So,
I'm just saying, Cole. Do you know how bad it is? How hard it is to win football games when your offensive line is that bad?
I don't, Cole. And this was my point. Not so much just BYU, but like, man, you say it about Indiana too, and I'm like, they just keep winning games. They won by 2 scores with their backup quarterback over. Like, I know Washington's not great, but it's at least a team. And Indiana is. They have passed the point of being fraudulent to me. They're going to win 10 games.
I don't like the trades of the property in college football, but I will say this because it is recent for both teams. Indiana just beat a team by 49 points that Ohio State should have lost to at home.
Okay, well, I need to see Indiana play somebody with a pulse.
That's fair.
I don't think Washington.
That's fair, but when
Nebraska and Washington have a pulse.
Wow. I'm not.
Nebraska stomped the 4th best team in the Big 12. If you want to go there,
I mean, I think if they rematch, Colorado would beat Nebraska.
Okay, and if they rematched, would Indiana still crush Nebraska and Ohio State wouldn't? Because that played 2 or 3 weeks ago. So just using your against you.
Ohio State is a 14-point favorite against Indiana. To give you guys an idea on what the metrics say in that matchup, Ohio State will beat Indiana in Columbus. I can't believe I'm having to stick up for you guys.
But that's going to be a close game. I'm just saying Ohio State's in trouble with that kind of offensive line.
Who do they? But okay, they played Penn State and then they got Indiana. They're going to beat Michigan. They don't play anybody else, right? I mean,
they can lose to Michigan just because, and I know Michigan can't score, but Ohio State's not going to score on that defense if they don't have an offensive line. Michigan will sack the quarterback every play.
Is it at Ohio State or Michigan?
It's in Columbus this year.
Okay. Yeah, so
that game still.
I could see Ohio State finish 10-2, but they're getting in with the name brand. So, I mean, I don't know what that does. Does that put them in the Big Ten championship if they're 10-2?
Probably not. If Indiana's 11-1.
Indiana's not going to be 11-1 because Indiana's losing this weekend. So they play at Michigan State. That's the 3-mall lock of the week. Michigan State.
We're battled out, but there's a real chance that it's Oregon against Penn State or Indiana.
Hey, look, A&M's going to lose at South Carolina this weekend.
But like Cole, you just said, but Ohio State, it could be 10-2, which means you have them losing at Penn State, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
If that happens, then Penn State's going to the Big Ten title game against Oregon. Ohio State's not even in the Big Ten championship.
That might be good for them. Not get another loss because, 10-2 Ohio State, I feel like with the name.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone will be penalized for losing the conference title game because they're playing an extra game than anyone else. Either way.
A&M's got Texas to close the season at home, obviously.
You're saying they both make it. Cool. I think A&M makes it. I do not think Ohio State.
I don't know if I'm going, I need this. I think this is a really tough matchup at South Carolina for A&M this weekend.
It is. So. But A&M, I don't. They also have Auburn and New Mexico State as 2 of the games that are left. So, they'll, even if you lose, if they finish 10-2, and they lose this week at South Carolina and they lose at Texas, still very good chance that they're going to get into the playoff. So, I think A&M's in. Boy, Derek, I'm inclined to go be out on Ohio State until proven otherwise, until they show me something better. I'm not feeling great about it right now.
If Penn State this weekend, they're in. If they lose, then it gets tight.
Yeah, I'll take just A&M.
Really impressed with A&M's resume with that 6-point win over Bowling Green. 10-point win over Mississippi State. Man, so stupid. These preseason rankings are so stupid. A&M shit.
Well, it's not so much.
They've also beat Notre Dame and LSU.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man. I don't. First of all, I wouldn't question the resume that much, and second of all, it's not the preseason ranking. It's that they're going to be a 10-2 team out of the SEC. Like that's what it is. If you want to complain about it, you can complain about that for sure. But
LSU fraud.
99% of football is fraud, apparently.
That's the thing, Cole. Like we're going down the list here. Like who's good? Who is good? Who is good in college football, according to Cole Manbeck? We know K-State lost by 30 at BYU, but we know Cole thinks K-State is good. Who else is good?
Well, I don't think that. I just defended Ohio State to you guys as you guys were trying to trash them one game.
The way football so well that I can't believe you will defend a team with probably an offensive line ranked in the 100s now.
I mean, I haven't. I didn't get to watch their game against Nebraska hardly because we were driving to Manhattan. So, I mean, I haven't been able to fully dissect it, but I don't know. I just trust Ryan Day will figure it out. I mean, I don't know.
I would trust Ryan Day to figure it out in big games. Are you kidding me? That's been the haunt of his career.
I mean, I could see them lose to Penn State. I wouldn't even go that far because it feels like Penn State's like the very popular pick right now at plus 3.5, and I could see them rally the team and go into Happy Valley and figure it out.
If they win that, I would be very impressed because I don't think they should be favored.
Well, what, Drew Aller's banged up, right? So that's part of it. I don't know if he's going to start.
The backup quarterback looked like more of Andy Kotelnicki's kind of guy anyway.
That's what I listened to the Solid Verbal. They said that he might be a better fit for what Kotelnicki wants to do.
So what if I asked you this? If you had to go win a game with Drew Aller or Will Howard, who would you take?
Well, are we talking like last 2 minutes of a game? I'd probably lean toward Will.
I think I would lean. I mean, neither one of them has done anything in significant games yet to make you confident. There's just not enough sample size there for me to feel good about either one. I don't know.
I think it's a pretty healthy debate. I don't know. I guess
with the way their teams are constructed this year. And I don't know. And that
I take Aller and Kotelnicki over Howard and Day. Put it that way.
It's saying and Ryan Day's not calling plays anymore.
Okay, Chip Kelly. Yeah. Yes. Fair enough. Yeah. I'd take Kotelnicki and Aller. All right. Well, Cole apparently already coughed up his pick. You're taking Michigan State
plus 7.5 at home against Indiana. But guys, take the money line. They're gonna win.
Okay.
I like Sparty plus 7.5 though. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I wouldn't take money line, but I could see that being a very close game. Now this is one, admittedly, old me would have looked at this and said, well, this line doesn't make much sense, so I guess I should lean into it. But I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to look at it and say, take it at face value. Be like, what the hell is Vandy doing being a 7-point underdog at Auburn? Vandy is a touchdown underdog at Auburn. Like, Vandy is, have we not gotten out of that mindset? Like, they're a pretty good team this year. They're 5-3. They beat Bama. They went to overtime at Mizzou. They played Texas right down to the wire, one possession game against Texas. And Diego Pavia, their quarterback, has already won in Jordan-Hare with New Mexico State. He won there with New Mexico State. Like, that guy makes plays. He's done it there before. That is one that I would take the money line on. What is Vandy doing being a 7-point dog in that game?
I will say it is a letdown spot, and they have lost to Georgia State this year as well. So this is the first time that their schedule kind of eases up. So where is their focus at? I'm taking Baylor -3. I think they're better than 3 points better than TCU. TCU's won 2 in a row. I think, or Baylor. I know Baylor has. I don't know.
TCU also has, because I saw it's the first time TCU's done it since their Big 12 championship game run, their national championship game run.
I just think Baylor is actually turned into a solid team that can really score the ball under Sawyer Robertson. I think the schedule helped, but I really think that team flipped when Sawyer Robertson became the quarterback. I think they got something there.
Okay.
Have you seen his numbers?
No. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. No, I was realizing that Cole had already made his pick. Yeah. Sawyer Robertson's a very good quarterback. I like him a lot. And if they had just knocked down a Hail Mary in Boulder, the conversation around Baylor, I think, would be quite a bit different.
And they almost beat BYU.
Yeah, came back, got way down early, came back. DUI's 5-3, by the way. Cole 3-5. I'm 2-6. I did get one last week. Thank you, Texas Tech. My guy Joey McGuire.
By the way, another one that I did like is the Ohio State team total under 24.5 for everything that we said earlier.
I'm going with K-State to win at Houston. All right, let's not get it twisted. I'm going with K-State to win at Houston. I do think it could be sort of an ugly game, but I'm gonna say K-State 31-16. Went with like kind of an awkward score there for Houston. Feels like they just might find some way to stumble their way into 16 points, bunch of field goals, 1 touchdown, 3 field goals, something like that.
I think ugly. I don't think field goals, because I think it's not a good day for field goals. I think a slow start. But I just think this Houston team is not talented enough to catch K-State even in a letdown spot or a difficult challenge, even if the game will be ugly. I'll say Kansas State 28, Houston 14.
I've got K-State 24-13 and what I believe will be a lower possession, lower scoring game with two solid defenses, bad weather. I think K-State will win by 2 scores, but I could see it being, 10, 11 point type of game. So I'll say 24-13. If it gets to 31, I think it's probably going to be because K-State forces a turnover that sets them up in advantageous field position, which is something that's very possible against his Houston offense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they threw
field goals. There won't be any field goals this game.
For 17 balls straight to Kobe Bryant, which, led to him adding the media. So, hey, got Kobe's confidence up for the game in Manhattan. I guess that was good. All right. Well, we've got a lot to watch, man, because we're not going to just be watching K-State and the Big 12. Everyone's going to be intently now watching Ohio State and Indiana this week, thanks to the 3-Mile podcast. So, Tony Petiti.
Penn State, don't they?
You're saying watching both games.
You're going to be watching both games. So, please, Tony Petiti, send us a thank you card to, for all the viewership that we are sending your league right now. This is a behemoth podcast, as Cole always likes to say. What do you say about it, Cole? What is it?
I say America's number one or America's most downloaded K-State podcast or something like that.
We spent half the show talking about the Big Ten, Tony Petiti, so you are welcome, my friend. Thanks to all of our great sponsors, Holiday, Home Field, Alinco. Thanks to Nick behind the scenes. And we will talk to you all soon. Take care, and we'll see you again on 3 Mile real soon.